Well, welcome, everyone. We delayed the start a little bit, and I apologize for the change, the last-minute change in time. We're still expecting a couple of people who we know are on their way to join us, but let's make a start. It's a great privilege and honor to have with us today Honorable Chairman Rabbani, who is the Chairman of the Senate. And let me start, before introducing him and handing over to him, just by saying a little bit about the International Growth Center. I'm Jonathan Leap. I'm the Executive Director of the International Growth Center, which is based here at the LSE, but is a joint center with the University of Oxford, which unusually for academic centers has long-term country presence in 4 South Asian countries, including Pakistan, and in 10 African countries. And Pakistan has been our showcase program. Pakistan was established, the program was established 7 years ago, is that right? 7 years ago, and has really become a symbol of what we seek to achieve in the IGC, which is to bring together top researchers and senior policymakers to make better policy. And to do that by closing the gap that too often sort of divides researchers and policymakers. So what is that gap? Well, they tend to be in different places. They tend to have different time frames. They tend to be in different cultures. They tend to have all sorts of things which make it quite hard, actually, for researchers and policymakers to come together. And what, thanks to funding from the UK Department for International Development, we've been able to do is to establish a long-term presence in country, which then makes it possible to overcome some of those obstacles. So we have the local knowledge and networks to understand the government's priorities, and we meet with government to decide what our strategy should be. So we want to collaboratively decide what priorities should be in establishing the Pakistan program, for example. And then on the back of that, to build engagements with different parts of government in the hope of informing policy. We focus, as you can gather from the name, particularly on growth, and we think there are really 4 key challenges to achieving sustainable growth. The first of these is having an effective government. The second is having productive firms and making sure more and more people work for productive firms and aren't stuck in low productivity activities. The third is having functional and livable cities, which is a big challenge for lower income countries. And the fifth is having access to energy. So we seek to do research that will generate new ideas to inform policy in all four of these areas, and to do it in a collaborative way. So my colleague, Dr. Bacha Khan, who's here, is our Research and Policy Director at the IGC. He has worked in a very close collaboration over 5 years with the Punjab Tax and Excise Department to understand how best to motivate tax collectors to get more revenue and to reduce corruption. So they've done studies so far experimenting with cash incentives, performance incentives for tax collectors, but they're also now examining non-financial incentives, so opportunities for promotion and for different postings and things. And the idea is to really get inside, get into the nuts and bolts of government and understand, so what is it that enables you to recruit the best people to government? What is it that enables you to get the best out of the people you have in government? And those are the kind of questions which researchers are in a position to say something about, and which can be deeply important in terms of making good policy. So we seek to do everywhere what we've succeeded in Pakistan, which is to build collaborations which bring together researchers and governments. And by researchers, I mean both top international researchers and local researchers. So we often work in collaborations in that sense as well. I've given you the example of the tax study. Among the other studies we've done a lot of work on urbanization. We're doing a study right now of the BRT, the bus rapid transit system in Lahore, trying to understand the economic impact of that. Do people who are close to those networks get better access to jobs? Do they end up with higher incomes, and do their kids go to school more? All those sort of broader impacts from infrastructure investments. We've also worked both with the Punjab province and with the KP province in developing economic growth strategies. So we've worked, in both cases, the work then generated a formal growth strategy for each of the 2 provinces. We've worked a lot on the ready-made garment industry, which of course is a key employer and a key source of growth, and one that's very important to understand at a deep level. So Pakistan for us is really what we'd like all of our country programs to be. That it's an example of where we've been able to engage very deeply with government, but also to bring in researchers that can generate new ideas and inform policy. It's a great pleasure to introduce Honourable Chairman Rabbani. He is, as you know, is the Chairman of the Pakistan Senate and represents the province of Sindh. He's perhaps best known for his constitutional reform, but also more generally for his support of social progress in Pakistan. He was an active critic of the martial law regime and was telling us earlier that as a student activist, and I understand spent some time in detention as a result of that. Notably, recently, he was in 2010 responsible for the 18th Amendment, which I'm sure most of you know, but for those of you who don't, was transformative in Pakistan in that it, in very important ways, devolved policy responsibilities to the provinces in a way that has generated a new dynamic. And I speak as an outsider, but it's clear to me in the times I've been in Pakistan and my engagements there that it's generated a new dynamic in terms of the role of the provincial governments and both a political dynamic but also an economic dynamic, which has been led to a whole string of developments, and I'm sure has underpinned our engagement as well as IGC. He was awarded the highest civil award, the Nishan-e-Imtiaz, for his parliamentary services, and his Bacha Khan, as well as the Bacha Khan Award for the Defence of Provincial Rights. It's a great pleasure to have him here with us at the London School of Economics, and a pleasure now to introduce him to you. Thank you.
Members of the podium, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear young friends, it's indeed a great honor and a great privilege, and I'm grateful to the Centre and the London School of Economics for having given me this opportunity of being present amongst you today, to be able to talk to you on the issue of building a strong, democratic and prosperous Pakistan. I think the question of building a strong, democratic and prosperous Pakistan is not as simple as the proposition in itself implies, because it takes root in history, and in particular in the flawed regional alignments that Pakistan has entered into, and its several times jilted relationship with the United States of America, and then fighting a US-sponsored jihad, and then subsequently being left with holding the then jihadis as babies in our hands and the Americans walking away. And then I find myself becoming a frontline state all of a sudden. And when I become a frontline state, I find that my society is totally torn asunder. And then I can very well understand the pain, the anguish that the people of Paris may be going through at this moment. Because I have had many Parises in Pakistan. I've had a Paris in Peshawar, where more than 150 young boys were butchered. And at that time, I just heard a vague whisper of condemnation from the West. And this is perhaps the disparity. This is perhaps the disparity with which Pakistan's story begins. The duality. And therefore I believe that in order for us to understand as to what are some of the issues that are confronting Pakistan today, and what are the impediments in building a strong and democratic and prosperous Pakistan, it is perhaps essential that we look into what are the ingredients that have gone into terror and how it has come into existence. Because I find that today Pakistan's future, fortunately or unfortunately, is linked with the story on terror and the fight on terror. And therefore I believe that it is essential that we see that what are the origins on the war on terror. And when we look at one of the origins, and I would place that at number one, I believe it is the Islamization of the war on terror. It is the fact that when you had a superpower with its vested interests and strategic interests, it invaded Kabul or Afghanistan, and at that time it waged a jihad. And at that time these were known as jihadis. But then, when that interest waned, they have now become terrorists. And they were left to live on the soil of Pakistan. There was no looking back by them as to how it would impact Pakistan, Pakistani society, and Pakistani economy. They brought with them the Kalashnikov culture. They brought with them a new black economy, and they brought with them a new mode and method of living. So that was one. And I think it is not fair. It's not fair at all to stigmatize a region, a people, a religion. Because when I look across, I find that, for example, in the United States of America, you have umpteens of examples where you have people going into schools and colleges and universities and shooting randomly and killing people and killing students. But are they called as acts of terror? No. Whenever I read a news report on that, I find that after a day or two, the report comes that these were people, or this was an individual who was mentally deranged. An act of terror in Asia and an act of terror in Europe or an act of terror in America has to be called an act of terror and not of mental derangement. Then I think we move on to the second issue. And the second issue is of outstanding historical disputes. You have long outstanding historical disputes, which till today, due to strategic reasons, still lack a solution. You have to admit that invasions in Africa, the Middle East, have proven counterproductive. They have broken down state structures, and as a consequence of that, there has been political instability and, nay, political chaos. You have still the outstanding issue of Palestine. You have the outstanding issue of Kashmir. They have all been denied solutions. And that is issue number two. The origin, according to me, at number 3, is the question of regime change. The policy of regime change. Look at the countries in the Middle East where regime change has taken place. Look at their structures, not that I would be defending those regimes, but nonetheless there was a semblance of order, there was a semblance of governance. State structures remained in place. But after regime change, the states have crumbled, giving rise to various groups and fractions, which have then found their way and filtered into either Al-Qaeda or Daesh. If we move on, you look at issue number 4, and that is the rise of racism and other extremist movements in the West itself. You cannot look in isolation. These are factors which give rise to a polarization. These are factors which give rise to a mindset. At number 5, you have the question of the immigrants, as we were discussing a little earlier when we were upstairs. There's the question of the immigrants, and there's also the question when a universal policy is not followed, when you have certain countries in Europe refusing to accept immigrants because they belong to a particular religion, that is Islam, you are then at the same time building a mindset, building isolation. Or you have people in Europe who are being deported, people in Europe who have got documentation, people in Europe who have got valid visas, but simply because they happen to be Pakistanis, without any rhyme or reason, if you start their deportation, you are giving rise to a polarization. You are giving rise to a particular mindset. Move on. Issue number 6. The question of double standards. I've just hinted at it a little earlier. But how do you explain away the fact that when fundamental rights are violated in a land which is Muslim, or where the fundamental rights are being violated of Muslims, for example, the glaring example is that of Palestine, you have the entire world simply going into hibernation. You are again giving rise to a mindset. You are again isolating a people purely on the basis of religion. Then, number 7, conflicts are at the basic origin of terrorism. Number 8, why are young people being attracted? Young people, according to me, are being attracted, A, because of the inequalities, the injustices, and B, because of a reaction to this policy of isolation. And then if we move on, I think what we are lacking essentially is a narrative or a counter-narrative. Because what must be understood is that those on the other side talk in terms of a narrative. And it is that narrative which needs to be countered. You cannot, according to me, or to an extent you can, crush terrorism through the power of the state. But eventually, it is the mindset, it is the counter-narrative which is important. And what could be the ingredients of that counter-narrative? According to me, number 1, the first ingredient of that counter-narrative has to be that you do not, as I said earlier, single out a particular religion, a set of people, or a country to be labeled as terrorism. And then I think you have to divide it. You have to divide it in 2. You have to divide it, 1, as to what the Western world has to do, and then you have to divide it into the other part as to what the Muslim world needs to do. So if we were to look at the first, then I think what emerges is that we have to ensure the settlement in the first of all long outstanding conflicts and issues, and not to focus on a particular religion in terms of terrorism. We also need to ensure that discrimination in policies does not take place, so that feeling of alienation is not there. And in Muslim countries, I think what is essentially important is, number 1, that it is required that they become democratic and transparent. Number 2, they address the issues of social inequalities and poverty. Number 3, take steps to stop the radicalization of their societies or of our societies. And number 4, start a de-radicalization program in our countries, which is realistic and which can move forward. I think that after having outlined some of these issues, if one was to look at the political history of Pakistan, then one would find that right from the day when Pakistan came into existence, and after the death of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the paradigm of Pakistan changed. Pakistan was envisaged to be a welfare state. Pakistan was envisaged to be a tolerant state. Pakistan was envisaged to be a democratic and progressive state. And I think the message of Pakistan can be found in the August speech of Quaid-e-Azam. But unfortunately, we forgot that. And we forgot it very conveniently. And we changed Pakistan from a welfare state to a garrison state, to a national security state. And therefore the entire paradigm shifted, the entire paradigm changed. It became necessary that the levers of power be controlled by Pakistan's civil and military bureaucracy. It became an imperative that centralization come into existence, where state power emanates from the capital, whereas in the original scheme of things, that was not the position. If you look at the Government of India Act 1935, under which Pakistan was governed till the 56 Constitution, the very nature and structure of the Government of India Act 1935 was that of federalism. There were subjects with the provinces, and there were limited subjects with the center, as it was then known. If you look at the constitutional history of Pakistan, you would find that gradually all the constitutional documents, whether it was the 58 Constitution, I don't consider the 62 Constitution to be a constitution, but nonetheless, since it's on the statutes, I have to make an unfortunate reference to it. But if you take that out, and you look at the interim constitution of 1972, and you look at the 73 Constitution, you would find that there is a continuity of the democratic and federal essence of the state. But as I was talking to you a little earlier, since we became a garrison state, since we became a national security state, it was essential that powers be concentrated with the civil and military bureaucracy. And I have no qualms in admitting that the political class failed. The political class, for their own petty advantages, became pawns, became puppets on a string, and pandered to the civil military bureaucracy. It is unfortunate, but that is our history. And I believe that if we do not come to grips with our own history, if we try and shy away from it, if we try and hide it, then if we are looking for a solution, then that solution will deny us. Because until and unless we do not learn from our mistakes of the past, we cannot build a new future. And I think it is now time, because Pakistan at the present moment stands at a crossroad. Pakistan stands at a crossroad when all roads but one leads to destruction. And that road is a democratic road. That road is a federal road. That road is a transparent road. That road is a corruption-free road. But in order to do that, it is essential, it is imperative that we do soul searching, we do inner criticism, and we try and build from the mistakes of our past. And therefore, all stakeholders in Pakistan's political history must have the moral courage to admit the mistakes that we have committed in the past. Because short of that, we will be caught in a cobweb. I will pass the blame on to the military will pass the blame on to the politician in turn will pass the blame on to the civil bureaucracy, and this merry-go-round will go on. The state can't afford it. The people can't afford it anymore. But do we have that moral courage? I, for one, belonging to the political class, admit our mistakes. Admit the fact that we were used. Admit the fact that we, for our own petty advantages, pandered to the civil military bureaucracy. But until and unless that realization comes across from all such people who were part of Pakistan's power equation, we will not be able to move forward. We must realize that particularly after the 1973 Constitution, that was a constitution which was given by a consensus. That was a constitution that was given by a political consensus. That was a constitution that was given by a consensus of all the federating units of Pakistan. And that is why you would find that despite the fact that military interventions came, despite the fact that political derailment and derailment of the constitutional mechanism came about, but yet no dictator had the moral courage to abrogate the 1973 Constitution. New terminologies were invented. The Constitution is in hibernation. The Constitution is in abeyance. Because they knew that the consensus that had been built in 73 would not be forthcoming if it was tampered with. The 18th Amendment came in its wake. The 18th Amendment came as a consequence of the Charter of Democracy. And the 18th Amendment reinforced the concepts of the 73 Constitution. It gave further expression to the concepts of the 73 Constitution. It did away with the concurrent list. It devolved something like 48 or 49, I don't remember the exact number, but it was either 48 or 49 items which were present on the concurrent list and sent them down to the provinces. I know, and I'm aware, and I'm sure that some of you may be having those questions in your mind, on the question of health and education, and particularly so on the question of education, and on the question of, in particular, the curriculum. Because a lot of talk was generated in Pakistan on these issues. It was originated by those who believe in the political mind, who believe in a centrist political mindset. And B, on the question of curriculum, it was further bolstered by those who want to continue with the status quo of maintaining Pakistan as a garrison state. And I say that because I would like you at some stage or some point when you come back to look at your history books, to look at your curriculum books, and you would find that the indoctrination of a military state begins from there. I do not see what is the issue if a province forms its own curriculum. I fail to see the issue. It's said that there'll be 4 different curriculums. There's a mechanism provided in the Constitution. There's the Council of Common Interest. If you want to maintain a form or an extent of commonality in the syllabus, you can take it to the Council of Common Interest, where the 4 chief ministers, the Prime Minister, and 3 or 2 federal ministers are members. You can achieve that there. But I fail to understand that why this fear? What would happen if tomorrow in Punjab the history of Bhagat Singh is taught? Is not Bhagat Singh a reality in Pakistani history? Did he not struggle against British imperialism? He would only go to richer Pakistan's history. And you cannot, this mindset which is prevailing in Pakistan's ruling elite, you cannot foster or you cannot impose a Pakistani nationality on an individual, like you cannot impose a culture on an individual. The Pakistani nationality will emerge when I have roots in my history. My culture or Pakistani culture will emerge when the cultures of the provinces are allowed to grow and blossom and flower. And from the synthesis of these 4 or 5 cultures will emerge the Pakistani culture. I'm sorry, I'm not ready to buy the fact that Arab culture is my culture. Arab culture is not my culture. My culture emanates from the Indus. And until and unless you don't allow me to own that culture, you're not going to get my ownership of my state. I have the severest of differences with India. But I find that at all international fora, when you go, regardless of his party, regardless of which state he belongs to, at that international fora, he is an Indian. Whereas that is not our case. Because he has roots. He connects He has ownership. I lack that ownership. I want that ownership of my state. I want that ownership of my culture. I want that ownership of my history. Please don't deny me that. Because if you deny me that, then you're taking me up a different alley. And that alley has a dead end. And I think another aspect which is underplayed of the 18th Amendment is the fact that it has stemmed, to a great extent, the nationalist movements. Because today, and I talk in particular about Balochistan, today the Baloch nationalist who wants to work within the framework of the Federation, who wants to work under the umbrella of the Constitution, today he has an argument. He has an argument for those who are up in the mountains. He has an argument for those who are outside of Pakistan. And he says that, look, I remained within the system. I sat across the table and I dialogued, and I was able to get to an extent, I will not say in its entirety, but I was able to get to an extent provincial autonomy, my rights. From a position of zero ownership of oil and gas, I have been able to get, after the amendment of Article 172 of the Constitution, 50% ownership of my land, resources in oil and gas. So he has a counter argument to give. And as a consequence of that, today you find, I don't say everything is hunky-dory, but you find that the argument of the extreme nationalist forces is running out of wind. But having said that, we must also be very careful. We must be very careful on the issue of the rollback. And there is attempts being made for a rollback of the 18th Amendment. And I say this across the board. I do not target a particular government, and I do not target a particular political party. The rollback started, I'll be candid, or attempts at the rollback started when my party was in power, when we, immediately after we had passed the 18th Amendment. Because the centrist mindset, which believes that a strong center is the guarantee of a strong Pakistan, are not ready to buy the paradigm shift that the 18th Amendment has brought about, and that is that strong federating units are a guarantee of a strong federating Pakistan. They are not ready to buy that. They are not ready to buy it for a number of reasons. They are not ready to buy it for fear of changing the philosophy of the state, for fear of losing the financial perks and privileges that go with centralization. But let me get back. That a rollback now at this stage, and these elements are to be found, as I said, in all political parties across. The civil bureaucracy is rampant with them, particularly the bureaucracy in Islamabad. But this will have disastrous consequences. A rollback at this stage, a retaking under one garb or another of the provincial autonomy that has been given to the federating units, will have disastrous effects on the federation, and God forbid, over a period of time, it could go to the extent of experiencing what the Soviet Union experienced. So it's a very dangerous game that is being played. Perhaps they are or they are not aware of its pitfalls. I think I would simply very quickly end the monologue and go in for your questions. But before I do that, I think that since the proposition says building a strong, democratic and prosperous Pakistan, let me very quickly outline to you what I believe are some of the steps that are essential. First, a realization that the issues and problems of Pakistan are such that no one party or institution can solve them. There is a need for a grand national consensus amongst political parties and between institutions that the future of Pakistan lies in a democratic, federal parliamentary democracy. Second, the national political, economic and strategic objectives need to be defined and priorities fixed. Third, all institutions need to work within the ambit provided by the Constitution. Fourth, a change in the mindset of the ruling elite, which is neither democratic nor inclusive. The Mughal and the British Raj attitude of the civil military bureaucracy needs to change. Fifth, the induction of the middle and working class in the political and parliamentary structures to break the monopoly of the urban and rural rich. Sixth, elimination of radicalism and sectarianism and promoting the values of tolerance which Islam preaches. Seventh, developing economic policies in the energy, manufacturing, agriculture, and mineral sectors that are aimed at poverty elimination and do not promote cartels or crony capitalism. 8. Giving substance to the article of the Constitution providing for free education, which does not create two classes of Pakistanis. 9. Giving expression to the 18th Constitutional Amendment, which has introduced the concept of participatory federalism and devolved the concurrent list to the provinces. 10th, the initiation of an intra-institutional dialogue to end historic animosity, settle issues of jurisdiction, and work in harmony for achieving the national objective. And I think this is something which is very essential. And the Senate has taken the initiative in this regard. It was for the first time in Pakistan's parliamentary history that we had the Honorable Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Pakistan coming before the Committee of the Whole of the Senate on the question of providing quick and cheap justice. And we thought that since the bench is perhaps the biggest stakeholder in this endeavor, it is necessary for to have their point of view before we put together our recommendations. And I invited the Chief Justice, and I'm grateful to him that he very graciously accepted that. And I think that this intra-institutional dialogue is perhaps the need of the hour, and it is required so that the isolation which has been built over a period of time, we are able to melt away that ice. B, as I said, the questions of jurisdiction can perhaps best be solved rather than through confrontation, through the process of mutual consultation. And thirdly, it would go a long way in strengthening the system. It would go a long way in strengthening and building institutions, and as a consequence, bringing in ultimately the rule of law. 11th, a multi-tier dialogue between the civil and the military. That is also an issue which needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed at all levels, and it has to be settled through a dialogue. And 12th, and finally, good governance and zero tolerance for corruption. I am once again very grateful to the Centre, and indeed to all of you for having patiently heard the monologue, and now I'm available for questions that you may have. Do I make the choice, or we'll start like this, go down, then we could go across.
I'm Mustafa Kamal from Gilgit-Baltistan. So my question is that what's the counter narrative for the people of Gilgit-Baltistan and FATA in your 18th amendment?
Unfortunately, Gilgit-Baltistan cannot be addressed under the constitutional arrangement, and I think that goes down into the realm of the outstanding dispute of Kashmir that is there. So for that, when the coalition government of the People's Party was there, a sort of self-rule was given, and which at that time looked something very impressive. But over a period of time, unfortunately, I have no qualms in admitting, over a period of time, that has again filtered back to Islamabad. The council in Islamabad under the governor has become, under the minister of Gilgit-Baltistan has become so strong that that self-rule is almost at naught. One. On the question of FATA, reforms were given to an extent that certain amendments in the FCR were proposed. At the present moment, the Senate is engaged in looking at this issue on what the future status of FATA should be, whether it should be an independent province, whether it should be merged with Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or whether it should be made into PATA, because these are perhaps the three alternatives that are there. And we have formed a committee of the whole where the Senate sits as a whole, and we've had our first meeting on that. And again, as I said, that FATA is also, apart from being a constitutional issue, it has other security implications as well. So the dialogue or the consultation will or should include all stakeholders, because it would become difficult to move without taking everybody on board. Ji.
Taimur Iqbal, Chief Correspondent, Prime TV. In regards to your thing on 18th Amendment, two things that I wanted to highlight. One, the ban that has been lifted on the third time Prime Ministership and the CMship on any politician, which essentially implies that Mia Nawaz Sharif can have as many terms as he likes. So does that strengthen Pakistani democracy? And two, because of the 18th Amendment, we all saw you crying, having tears in your eyes on the eve of the
The 21st Amendment.
And that particular amendment, 18th Amendment, basically implied or it strengthened the fact that no parliamentarian can vote against the will and wishes of his own party. Does that again strengthen democracy, or does that strengthen the grip of a political party?
I'm grateful to you for having asked these two questions. Number one, on the question of two-time, three-time Prime Minister. I think it is not the case or the question of an individual. When we were discussing this issue in the Constitutional Committee, we had two models before us which are prevalent in the world. One is that you limit the number of times that a person can become the Prime Minister or the President. And the other is that there is no limit. We had a debate on this, and I don't think we kept individuals in front of us, and we opted for the second model, which is universally also accepted, and democracies across have that model, whereby there is no bar on the number of times that a person can be elected as the Prime Minister, or can be elected as the Speaker, or can be elected as the Chairman of the Senate. So I think that was neither to strengthen an individual, but that was accepting one or the other model which is prevalent in international practice. On the second question of Article 63A that you are talking about, I think that given, ideally speaking, 63A should not be there. I agree with you, yes, ideally speaking. But are we living in an ideal world? Number one. Number two, is Pakistani politics that mature? Number three, what has Pakistani politics history been? Have we not had Lotus? Have we not had floor crossing? Have we not had blackmailing? And this I'm talking about my own class, I'm talking about no one else. So having kept the historical perspective in mind, it was thought necessary that on 3 or 4 basic essential issues, for example, the election of the Prime Minister, or the election of a Chief Minister, on the question of the budget, on the question of a constitutional amendment, members be made subject to the whip of the party. And therefore, as a corrective measure, let us put it that way, for the time being, maybe parliaments, if the system is allowed to go on and the system matures in itself, we will automatically come to a stage where parliamentarians would feel that if they have such strong issues with a policy of the party, then they would resign. And I include myself in that, and voting for the 21st Amendment, I include myself in that. That if I had enough moral courage, I would have tendered my resignation, but I didn't. I admit that. I didn't have that moral courage. Prior to that, on a number of issues, you may be aware, I resigned from the federal cabinet. But resigning basically from membership of parliament, I didn't have that moral courage. So I think that it is necessary for the time being that these fetters be placed on a restricted number of votes that an MP has to take. Can we just quickly go on to this side and then come back? Ji.
Sorry, I'm Salma Khilji. Just continuing
Dangerous
on,
name.
it's with the youth. So continuing on what he just mentioned, it's a very valid point because I feel like if you're liable to the chief whip of your party, then your democratic agency as an MP is diminishing because you're, like for example, you disagreed with the 21st Amendment, but then you had to vote for it. And you know, I think it does compromise on democracy because you as a representative of your constituency are supposed to be answerable to the people, right? Not just to the political chief of your party. So I think maybe some conversation can be started on changing that now. And secondly, my biggest qualm these days is the cybercrime bill that's in the parliament. And we've been in touch with some PPP legislators that are, you know, positively talking about it, but I would really request you in the Senate to block it because there's so much censorship of online speech that people like us who express ourselves politically only through social media will not be able to do so. So we don't want to be another Turkey or another China. So that's just my request.
It was PPP which banned YouTube, so I totally
Well, as far as the as your observations are concerned, I think I would agree with you. It is perhaps time to start to revisit 63A. But then, you know, even if you look at Western democracies, party whip is there. And there is a very fine distinction which I think needs to be applied then. That you win an election, basically, on a party ticket. And when you are becoming a member, or you have applied for a ticket of the party, you are aware of what the party positions are on various issues, apart from an odd or a free case that may come up, which was totally new. So I think that to an extent, party whip has to be exercised, and you cannot be totally a free agent in those terms. We have experimented with free agents in the partyless elections, and we have seen how those free agents have acted during Zia's period. So I think we've been through that also. But yes, a dialogue on 63A, on how it could be made softer, perhaps we can start. And as the system goes on and matures, perhaps we would be able to bring about some substantial changes. As far as the Cyber Act is concerned, and as far as blocking it in the Senate, I'm neutral. But a lot of people in Pakistan and a lot of legislators across the board share your concerns, and I think in both houses it's not going to be easy sailing. G. Sorry. Yeah, can I come back to you? The young lady was there.
Sorry, I have to rush for another event
Duty.
by an entrepreneur.
Okay.
With due respect to you. My name is Sana Musharraf. I'm a postgrad student here, and I had the opportunity to work for the Vision 2030 of Pakistan with the platform of Pakistan-Japan Business Forum under the leadership of the former High Commissioner, Mr. Abdul Qadir Jafar here. Having analyzed several sectors and having analyzed how the bureaucracy functions, the myriad of problems that you gave a sketch of is undeniably complicated. However, it boils down to two basic issues, one of mindset and the other of leadership. My question would always be to people in power, both social prestige-wise and having positions of power, where do you think that the leadership would come from in a country where individualism is more preferable in places of power rather than institutional power? And when you mention democracy as a way forward, democracy would be a way forward with stronger institutional leadership, which is sadly absent in Pakistan. That was my understanding. Where will you get institutional leadership in Pakistan, and how would you make democracy a feasible governance
My dear, let me phrase what you've said a little differently. I don't agree with that thinking, which says that democracy or strengthening of institutions is a light switch. You'll switch it on and voila. You've got strong institutions, you've got democracy functioning, you've got traditions. It doesn't happen that way. You're living in the United Kingdom. Just look at the tradition and history of the British Parliament. Just look how many speakers got their heads chopped off while voicing the concerns of their members before the king. And how gradually the institution of Parliament and other institutions was built up. Unfortunately, or fortunately for them, they were given a free hand in building those institutions. The system went on. Same was the case in India after partition. The system went on. But unfortunately, as far as I am concerned, or you are concerned, we at the interval regularly of every 10 years have had a constitutional deviation. And we have gone back to dictatorship, which in its essence is individualism. So how do you expect systems to grow? How do you expect institutions to become stronger? How do you expect rule of law to prevail? It is the continuity of the system. It is the continuity of the process which is going to make institutions strong, which is going to weed out the corrupt. And let me be frank with you, I do not subscribe to the thinking or to the philosophy that, okay, you make a special law, you make a special court, and you try Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z for corruption. It doesn't work that way. What happens is that, as you are aware, because of the failings of the prosecution, you are unable to prove those white-collar crime cases. Even here it becomes very difficult to prove white-collar crime cases, let alone in Pakistan. And then what you do is you justify their call of political victimization. So the best way of weeding them out is through the electoral process, through the process. If tomorrow people feel that Raza Rabbani is a corrupt man, maybe one election I will come. But the second time when I go and I continue my corruption during my first term, I will be thrown out by the people from my constituency. They won't accept me. And once I'm thrown out from there, that brings an end to my political career. So it is the continuity of the process. The continuity of the process will throw up leadership. The continuity of the process will strengthen institutions, and the continuity of the process will bring in rule of law. I'll just come back.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I must thank you for your audacity of accepting all facts and presenting it in a very good way. One of the components of a stronger democracy is having fair and free elections. Unfortunately, Senate elections have been heat of controversy, especially during the recent elections in which even the party members backed out. So how do you want to reform those elections, number one? Secondly, you being as the Honorable Chairman, how would you want the Senate to perform during your year? What's your idea of a good Senate in Pakistan?
Thank you. First of all, on the question of elections to the Senate, I couldn't agree with you more. That the elections were perhaps a disgrace to the name of elections in some of the provinces. Having said that, We are conscious, and when I say we, I'm talking about the Senate and not just myself. We are conscious of this fact. And we have taken this issue in the Committee of the Whole of the Senate. And we've had one meeting on that, and we have initiated this debate ourselves as to what are the best ways forward in eliminating corruption in the financial corruption in the Senate elections. Essentially, very quickly, there are two points of view. One point of view is that if you have direct elections for the Senate like you have in the United States, perhaps this issue will go under the carpet. But apart from a lot of the drawbacks of a direct election, the direct election, according to me, hits out at the very basis of the Senate. Because the authors of the 73 Constitution did not bring about the system of proportional transfer of vote just because they thought that it's a nice system. It has a philosophy behind it. And that philosophy is that all shades of political opinion that are reflected in the Provincial Assembly should get a reflection in the Senate of Pakistan, which is the House of the Federation. And that the feeling of alienation of any one nationalist group is also represented, and they are stakeholders in the Federation at the federal level. So that is the basic philosophy on basis of which the Senate has come into existence. And that is why you see that parties with 3 or 4 members in the Provincial Assembly have 1 senator being represented in the Senate also. So if you go in for direct elections, then that will mirror essentially the result of the National Assembly. So you hit out at the very basis of the formation of the Senate. Having said that, I think, and I won't share it with you, but I think there are solutions in the given system. But as I said, that the debate is still going on within the Senate. Hopefully we have a deadline of perhaps the first quarter of next year, by which we want to make our recommendations as to what it is. If the Senate decides to go for, the majority decides to go for general elections, fair enough. But within the system, I think there are safeguards that can bring it about. Your second question on how do I envisage the Senate, there are a number of reforms that we have already brought about by way of changing of the amendments in the rules. But very quickly, I think what is needed is an ownership of the people in Parliament. And that ownership can only come about if there is a feeling of Parliament being reachable and Parliament being transparent. And at the same time, for that, we have taken steps. I can give you one very small example. We have redone our website, and you can go onto that website, and starting from the pays and privileges of the Chairman Senate down to an ordinary senator, you would find that we have put all of that onto the website, so that everybody knows that what are the pay, what is the pay, what are the privileges, what are the allowances. We have put onto the website all of the rules, including the rules of recruitment, including the rules that govern our finances. We have put all of those rules onto the website again. The meetings that we have that we hold. We have put their minutes onto the website. As far as the question of the attendance of members, that became a sticky question with reference to the National Assembly. That is also on our website, not only of their Senate attendance, but also of their attendance in the committees. So we've also introduced a system of public petition, whereby on the website, any citizen of Pakistan can petition the Senate, provided it's a collective issue and not an individual issue. And then that goes through the Secretariat. We then refer it to whichever relevant standing committee that is to look into it, and he can keep a trace on the website, because it generates a number the moment it comes, and through that he can keep a trace as to at what stage his petition is. And if we feel that certain petitions need to be discussed in the House, the importance of the issue is such, like for example the CSS issue, the age issue, we took it into the House. We got an assurance from the government that from the next term they would increase the age limit. So we have that. So we are moving in that direction. Essentially it is ownership and transparency, because I believe that in the given circumstances, Article 6 has become redundant. And the only way that democracy and its institutions or the Constitution can be saved is if people come out, if there is a deviation. And that can only happen if there is an ownership. And to generate that ownership, steps have to be taken. G, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you for your insightful talk. Your views resonate with the views I hold. My question to you is, do you think in the current Parliament, both upper house and lower house, they have the political will to not amend, not repeal, but to amend the blasphemy law? Given that your own political party has been decimated in Punjab, and which is a power base, and both contending political parties, they are right of the center.
It would be difficult for me to speak on behalf of other political parties, but I think what needs to be seen is that I don't know whether you are aware, there is a very significant judgment of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, which has come about, I think, about 2 weeks ago.
Almost a month.
Almost a month, which is, again, I think, a very bold judgment in the given circumstances, whereby they have said that it would not be blasphemous if one was to talk about amending and bringing about safeguards in the blasphemy law, because that is that is the essence of Islam, that safeguards and all should be provided. I would suggest you read that judgment. It's a very bold judgment. And as far as your question, I would not want to seem to hedge it on whether Parliament would be able to legislate an amendment straight away. I think it would require a lot of consultation, and it's not something that would just come about automatically, because there are a lot of considerations. The objective realities have to be kept in mind. G.
My name is Monica, and I'm from Political Economy at King's College. My question is that when we talk about democracy in Pakistan, it is like avoiding a direct military assault on the democratic process. I mean, when are we going to talk about participatory democracy? And by that, I mean a meaningful, effective local government. The trickle down of power from the center. I mean, you being the chief author of the 18th Amendment, you know the potential has not been realized.
I think I couldn't agree with you more. The actual solution is in participatory democracy. But the question is that in order to achieve participatory democracy, you have to cross various thresholds. The problem in our political history has been, and which continues, that we don't get past step one. When we are at step one, we go back. It seems that we relish the quotation of Chairman Mao when he said, one step forward and two steps backward. That seems to be the history of Pakistani democracy, where you take a step forward and then you take two steps backward. That is one. Number two, yes, there is a question of the local bodies. I think local bodies are very essential, particularly in a federal form of government. That is the third tier, and that third tier is very important. And you have Article 140 or 141, 140A, I think, dealing with local governments in the Constitution. But again, I don't want to bore you people with going back into history, but the point is that you cannot look at the present and build for the future without having a look at the historical background and why, to an extent, there is a reservation or there is a holdback by political parties on the question of the local bodies. And that is that if you look back, whenever military dictatorship has come, it has straight away gone in for local bodies. And it has gone in for local bodies in order to establish their legitimacy. And therefore it has been used as an antithesis to Parliament and the provincial assemblies. So there is that block. Let me admit it, in our minds, there is that block. We need to get over it, yes, I agree with you. That we need to get over it, and I think that the Supreme Court has helped us a great deal in that respect, in helping us or forcing us to get over that block. So I think we are now beginning to move towards that end, but I agree with you that we have to talk about participatory democracy. Ji. Yeah.
My name is Saleh. Thank you so much for your speech. And I have two questions. My first question is that Pakistan has had a lot of opportunities in the last 10 years to evolve, right? And whenever we have a problem in Pakistan, politicians in Pakistan like to become victims and explain, blame external problems, especially America. Imperial British is like our favorite word, and we all do all those things. And we very quickly create like a constitutional fog, like this is wrong with the constitution, this, that, it needs to be corrected. But there's so many problems which Pakistan faces as a whole. The most important is the fourth point of the IGC, which is energy. And Pakistan, since the last 8 years, nothing has been done to solve the energy problem. It's just empty rhetoric of one after the other. That's what are your views on that? And secondly, I understand your support for devolution of power into provinces. That's something I support myself. But at this moment in time, where corruption is so extremely high in Pakistan, do you think that devolution of power into provinces will increase corruption a lot more, does Pakistan right now need a more centralized government to keep a check on corruption and to rein in corruption, than give corruption out into many provinces where everybody's just waiting to get their hand into the pot, basically?
Can I start with the second part of your question on the issue of corruption and the issue of devolution adding to the corruption? Let's start from here. That was there no corruption when these subjects were with the federal government? Corruption was rampant. Corruption has been a perennial problem with Pakistan from 48, 49, it has started. And it continues till today. So the question is not of whether corruption will increase. The corruption will come to an end only when A, there is a change in mindset. 2, there are systems in place. 3, when there is respect for rule of law. 4, when institutions are strong. It is only then that you would be able to rein in corruption. When society rejects a corrupt person. I remember my parents telling me, and I'm sure Wajid Saab is sitting here, he would remember, no reflection on his age, but he would remember that there was a time in Pakistani society when a corrupt man would walk in and people would just fall silent. And then when he would go, he would be subject of criticism. Today it is the reverse. Today if an honest man walks in, people fall silent. And when he goes, they say, and if you allow me to say it in Urdu, कि यार ये वो पंजाबी के छड्डो यार ये तो बेकार है. So it is not until you change that mindset will you be able to halt corruption. But what if you don't devolve? Look at the other side. Okay? If you don't devolve, then the polarization that had come particularly between the smaller provinces and the federation, and the polarization between the provinces themselves, that had reached such astronomical proportions that until and unless that issue was addressed, and even today, believe me, there are people in Pakistan who say that the 18th Amendment hasn't done enough. But in order to iron out that polarization, in order to keep the federation intact, it was essential. And I think that is why the entire parliament rose together, because they realized the writing on the wall, that where it was leading to. So I think that it was essential. Ji.
So you're talking about mindsets a lot, changing mindsets. And when we think about building a strong, democratic and prosperous Pakistan, as a woman I would want to know how important the role in the democratic discourse, because you belong to a party which has, fortunately, Shahid Benazir Bhutto as the leader for so many years, and one party which has also given women a lot of key positions. But with the current Saudi Arabiization of Pakistan under the current regime, I fear that in the democratic discourse of Pakistan, women will be highly missing. What's your take on that?
I don't, as far as my position and my party's position is concerned, you've already spoken about that. But I think that the awareness in the Pakistani woman today has reached such proportions that it is not possible. I will not say easy, but I would use the word possible. It is not possible to sideline. You may, if you take the example, like for example, you have a dam, the water gets stored up, but at one time, either through pressure of the water or when the gates are open, it just flows out. So you may find that there may be a degree of slackness in one period or another, but to feel that there would be an elimination, I think that that is not possible anymore, and the credit for that will not go to any one particular political party, but I think the women themselves have become so enlightened so aware of their rights that it is no longer feasible to minus them from the equation. G.
I agree with your mandate generally, but my question and concern is that how can a society that feeds off corruption reject corrupt leadership? And in that case, how can we, as Pakistanis, achieve a transparent democratic process? And if not, then is democracy just a buzzword for political parties? Because I mean, those are my main concerns.
Let me put this question the other way. What if there is no democracy? If you can give me an assurance, and I don't mean you personally, but if anybody can give me an assurance that tomorrow you have dictatorship in Pakistan and corruption will come to an end, you'll find me voting for dictatorship. But look at the cycle. Look at the cycle. Each dictatorship that has come has corrupted society even more, because for them it is a compulsion. Now let me take you back a little. For example, prior to Ziaul Haq's Majlis-e-Shura, prior to that, there was no development funds which were given to MNAs and MPAs. But Zia, since he needed legitimacy and he had no political party and he had these individuals, he introduced this as a form of bribe. And then it just got institutionalized. So it's not that democracy is corrupt and you have under dictatorship you have a corrupt free system. No. It works conversely. But at least in democracy you have the biggest check, and that biggest check, and don't take it lightly, that biggest check are the people themselves. I'll give you a very small example. My dear friend is sitting over here. He will bear me out. Before the electronic media came, I was not exposed, because I would sit and I would have somebody draft out my statement, and that statement would come in the newspaper, and people would say, "Oh, look at him, he speaks wisdom." But when I go on talk shows, and one talk show, two talk shows, three talk shows, and I'm hollow, I get exposed. So similarly, when you go before the people, and the people have tremendous wisdom, believe me. Their rustic wisdom is so sharp that we stand nowhere in front of that. So it is the continuity of the system which is going to throw up clean people. And once some semblance of clean people begin to come in, you will find society reforming itself. But again, as I said, these are long and painful processes. We should not think that Mr. A or Mr. B or Mr. C has come and the process is going to change. It's embedded. It's embedded from top to bottom.
I'm Isabel Hanki, student here at the LSE. Thank you for your talk. My question is, why do you think a dual nationals shouldn't be allowed to contest elections in Pakistan, where there might be many patriotic foreign residents who want to do well for Pakistan, and there are many other countries of the world, for example Britain, where dual nationals are allowed to contest elections. Why do you think that isn't a possibility for Pakistan?
There are a lot of people in Pakistan, and there are a lot of parliamentarians also who believe that dual nationals should be allowed to contest the elections. I unfortunately am one of those who believe that no, dual nationals should not be allowed to. Yes, I will come to that. I think there are, I am at no stage when I say that, I am at no stage questioning the patriotism of any Pakistani, because I don't think that that is my place to be sitting and issuing certificates of who is a patriot and who is not a patriot. But when I look at examples, and I'm now going back to my own class, I'm not talking about professionals. When I go back to my own class of politicians, I find that it has not been a very savory experiment when dual nationals have come in as in high constitutional offices. And perhaps if the system goes on, Parliament becomes stronger, systems become stronger, then maybe I may be in a position to change my opinion, but for the moment, I'm sorry. Ji.
My name is Aslam Shakir. Do you think that China-Punjab economic corridor is going to be a threat to the Federation because of the attitude and policies of the Punjab-based politicians?
Well, first of all, I think it's not the China-Punjab
corridor. Because of the attitude of the Pakistani.
It's essentially a China-Pakistan corridor, and I don't think, and essentially the emphasis is on Gwadar and building the port and then building the road from there. I am aware of the concerns of the smaller provinces with particular to the construction and the western issue of the road. And I think that it would be wise on the part of the government if it was to allay those fears of the provinces. We've had a number of very, very fierce debates in the Senate. We've had a number of walkouts in the Senate on this issue by the opposition, and in particular from senators from the province of Balochistan. And so I am sensitized to that. And I think better wisdom should prevail if the government comes clean on that issue, and the sooner it comes clean, the better it would be for the Federation.
Sir, I want to stick to the topic of corruption.
Okay.
It is a parasite for the Pakistan society. And I want to commend you for the guts and courage you showed when you admitted the fact that the political elite of Pakistan is corrupt, but it is across the board. It is also in the military bureaucracy or the civil bureaucracy. But I want to ask you, not as a member of Pakistan People's Party, not as a chairman of the Senate. I want to ask you as a person who has struggled for democracy, that is it fair enough to endorse corruption in the name of political reconciliation? Is it going to be beneficial for democracy in the long run? Because there is zero accountability. The National Accountability Bureau is non-functional. It is non-functional, and we are living in a society where there is no accountability at all, from top to bottom. So what do you have to say about it? How do you feel as a person who has struggled so much for democracy, and when we have the blessings of democracy, and we are not able to deliver to the people of Pakistan? How do you feel about that?
Sick. But having said that, again, it's all very well to say that politicians are corrupt, and I think there is a slightly higher set of principles that would apply to public representatives. But having said that, it's not all hunky-dory on the other side as well. And when I say that, I'm not justifying. But what I'm trying to say is that the perception right now which is being created is that politicians per se are totally corrupt. The civil military bureaucracy is as if they've come from the Vatican. But that is not the position. I'm saying I'm ready to go up for accountability. I'm ready to face whatever charge you bring. But then let my counterpart in the two other equations, in the two other factors which are in the power equation, then let them also be brought before. And it is not fair to say that one set of people would be tried in special courts and the other set of people would be tried by their own peers. It's either that we're all tried at one level and the law is equal for all of us, or then if others are to be tried by their peers, then I should be allowed a trial by my peers as well. So the complication comes when there is this duality, when there are these double standards, and when there is a deliberate attempt. And this ties in. If you go back, and I don't want to tire you people because you've already been hearing me for a very long time, but this ties in with what I said earlier about 47, the change in the nomenclature of the state. From that very time it was being said that the politicians are corrupt, they are inept, they can't deliver, they are nincompoops, and all wisdom rests with us. Because there was a need to defame the political class in order to keep control of the powers of the levers of the state. So that is what I'm saying, that across the board accountability should be there, and that is perhaps the only way we'd be able to achieve.
Thank you. Two questions. We sort of skirted around the issue that the civil-military imbalance, the relationship between the two seems to be at an all-time low and does not seem to be recovering. The civilian leadership seems to be ceding more and more space in the name of security to the military leadership. Second point is a little different. You've talked about the rights of the working class. While at this time, there are huge land grabs that are going on across different parts of the Punjab and in other provinces as well in the name of housing societies for defenders of the country. So, how do you, sort of meet the needs of the poor that you talk about, the working class, when you've got these elite institutions that are being built?
I think you are well aware of my views on both these issues. As far as the first issue is concerned, it is a seesaw battle. Sometimes I think there was a time when in the last parliament we had the joint sitting of parliament in which was held in camera for 8 days, in which the military leadership was at the bar of parliament, including the then DGISI. And he was at the bar of parliament for about 8 hours. But then you have this situation now. But I think that the best forum, and that is why in one of the points that I had kept on the way forward, is that a dialogue needs to be initiated, because till such time as you do not have a dialogue and you do not have forums, things really don't gel. And I have found that once you have the forums, you find that a healthy situation can develop. Let me give you an example. For example, with that very joint sitting which I was talking to you about, that joint sitting gave birth to a national security, Parliamentary Committee on National Security. And that Parliamentary Committee on National Security drafted 84 84 recommendations to give practicality to the resolution that was passed on national security. And those 84 recommendations were passed with taking on board all the stakeholders. DGMO came before the committee, DGISI came before the committee, and not once, on a number of occasions. Similarly, after the Osama incident, when the relations with the United States and ASAF went for a 6, this very committee formed the new terms of agreement between the United States and ISAF. And again, the military stakeholders were on board, and they came, they were consulted, the recommendations were framed, they were discussed, and we were able to come out with a consensus national document. So I think if forums are provided, which are forums within the Constitution, I've personally experienced, because I was heading that committee at that time, that you can begin a dialogue, you can make inroads into areas which at one time would be considered taboo areas for civilians to traverse. So yes, institutions, and that is why I say institutions need to talk to one another. Because if you don't talk, you're not going to be able to solve issues, and you would just be ceding ground as you do. On the question of housing societies, there are many more things other than housing societies which need to be curbed, but I agree with you. That is an issue, and quite a few of us in Parliament have taken positions on that, but so it goes.
Tariq Suleiman from Bloomsbury, Pakistan. It's been a delight to listen to you. And
thank you.
Senator, it's what you've been saying has already been a discourse in mainstream discourse among academia and scholars and students of modern South Asian politics and history. It's also been a mainstream discourse among students of Pakistani origin in British universities. But that candid, open and meaningful discourse is probably one of the prerequisites for building a strong, democratic and prosperous Pakistan. But that discourse in itself is absent from Pakistani universities. That's one. The other is that you mentioned rustic wisdom of Pakistani people. But again, you also mentioned that it's a very initial stage of the political process, which probably one day will deliver the institutions which we are hoping. But do you think that giving voting rights to 8 million strong Pakistani diaspora can help build a strong democratic process?
Can I pose a counter question? What is the alternative?
Alternative for?
For if you don't give that voting right, what is the alternative?
Yeah,
how do you reduce the number?
We don't have at the moment that voting right to diaspora, so I wanted your opinion on that.
Well, firstly, on the question of the universities, yes, I think the universities need to do a lot more. But I wouldn't say that this debate is totally absent. There are a number of academics who are and who have been over a long period of time, even during the days of martial law, been voicing their opinion. But perhaps it is not as widespread as you have in universities abroad. But I think that voice is there. And with the passage of time, I think that voice is gaining ground, not only in universities, but also in civil society, and also amongst the politicians as well. You have that. As far as your second question is concerned, I'm sorry, I've not been able to understand that. So could you kindly clear that a little?
What I meant was that Pakistani diaspora, the dual nationals cannot contest elections, but they can vote. Having a voting right to
I don't think that voting right is there at the moment. I was reading that no, if they come back to Pakistan, yes, there they can vote. But over here, I don't think they can vote from here. There is no system. I was reading in perhaps yesterday's or day before's newspaper that in one or two of the embassies somewhere, they have had some mock polling to see whether that experiment is successful or not, or whether they can do it or not. Obviously, if voting rights like that are conferred, then if you are given a voting right, then correspondingly other rights will come up also. But for the moment, I think that if we are talking about transparency and we're talking about non-rigged elections, then adding on a very questionable mode of voting and of compiling the results and counting and sending them across, whether our commission and whether our system is mature enough to absorb that, I think it's a big question mark, and I think as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we are mature enough at the moment. Ji.
Thank you for the talk, sir. My name is Umar. I'm a law student at SOAS. Echoing what the gentleman said already about discourse on university campuses, I know that you're not directly related with the Sindh government, but it is a PPP government. And as a member of the party, it's given that discourse hasn't reached the level that it might have in British universities, especially on university campuses, but active steps taken by governments or political and institutional establishments in both Punjab and Sindh to curb discourse on taboo issues or issues that need discourse, things like Balochistan versus the Karachi University issue or the issue in lumps. Why doesn't the PPP government in Karachi do anything about it when people are fired for inviting Balochi activists to talk in Karachi University, or when member of certain institutions go into lumps and tell people not to invite individuals from Balochi activism? And just to add to that, students have been agitating for the right to unionize in Pakistan for a number of years now, and this was a right that was taken away under a military dictatorship. PPP had the last government, PPP is still in the parliament, and now that PMLN is in the government, this issue still doesn't seem to make it to the parliament, even though people and students are out on the streets, in the Senate, or even in the media on a large scale, or in the parliament. So both of those things could help quite a lot with actual academic discourse on issues that Pakistan are facing.
I think I agree with you, particularly on the student union issue. I'm sorry, I think I touched on on the student union issue. And in fact, in the first speech that Prime Minister Gilani gave in Parliament, he spoke about restoring student unions. But unfortunately, we spent our 5 years in government and we were unable to restore student unions. I think they are a necessary nursery for for the political process. And if you look at some of the present leadership, you would find that all of them have a student leader or a student union background. So that is essentially an essential nursery, and I think that needs to be done. But the biggest impediment that comes in the way is that unfortunately student politics became weaponized, and campuses and hostels became sanctuaries. So that is one part of it. But I think that does not absorb the state of the fact that it should enforce that this does not happen. But that's a point well taken. On the other question, I think the Sindh government has arrested 3 or 4 people in connection with the murder of the young lady who was murdered after she had invited the Baloch nationalists. This is a wider question of the state and involvements at various levels. So it's not just a question of an individual acting or an act being done in isolation. And that is why I said that it is essential for state institutions to enter into a dialogue, to find a solution to such issues and also the issue of missing persons. That is a perennial question that needs to be addressed, that needs to be taken care of. You just can't put it under the rug like that. So I think these issues need to be taken up.
Professor
Yeah, please, thank you.
Yes, I will now deliver a 30-minute discussion on it. No, I will not. I was advertised as a discussant, but I think you can see many reasons for why we wanted to let the chairman speak and wanted to hear more of his views and his voice. I could see in the eyes of so many of you how proud you feel of someone with such command of the language and command of the analysis, and it was a great pleasure to listen to you. And I certainly could not in any way do justice to the complexity that you described, both what you call the sort of euphemistically regional realignments, or the geopolitics of Pakistan are almost it's very hard to fully take on board, and of course what you described as the complexity of the situation from a welfare state to a garrison system, and or a welfare system to a garrison system. I think we cannot even imagine what that would be like, even though of course what's going on in Europe right now, there are of course small elements of that in front of our eyes here as well. No, I really wanted to, I would have made some analysis of the growth conundrum in Pakistan, and what is the challenge to bring back real growth or growth that a country like Pakistan deserves. And I would have talked about things like structural reform and labor market policies and industrial policy and so on. But in the end, I would have ended up exactly where chairman ended up. That it's about building a strong state, and a strong state is not a state that is running loose, going rogue. It's a state that is responsive to its citizens. It's not a state that gives in to vested interests. It's a state that can stand up for rules and regulation. And it's a state that's subject to the rule of law, so that the rule of law balances or checks the state. It's also, you spoke so, and it's in the title, of course, and it comes before, prosperous, democratic state, and the democracy that gives the state that strength. It is from that the democratic state derives its strength, is from the democracy. I would add one thing, and you were touching on it, is the inclusiveness and the contestability of markets. And I hear talk, of course, you mentioned the participation of women in politics, but also in the economy, which is, I think a major challenge in Pakistan and in many other countries that I have had the pleasure to study over the years. But I think this is a very profound challenge, and something that is very much connected to the strength of the state, because the strength of the state ultimately is there to ensure the contestability of markets and ensure the inclusiveness of markets and the open entry and exit. And the way you described how you build a state, and I understand, I'm looking forward to reading your book on the building the federal state of Pakistan, and this Amendment 18 that I only very recently have fully understood the importance of it, and also, of course, the limitations and the challenges that you face. But I think it's in that you get the strength, the accountability of the state. So thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, and of course also the audience. Thank you so much. I think
more thanks.
Yeah. But the sophistication of the questions, I think, do justice to the challenges that you are facing, and the determination at which you are trying to address them. Thank you very much.